Hello everybody, this is Jimmy and welcome to Jimmy Does Knitting. So, we've got a lot for you today. I have been hardcore anxietying, which means a lot of knitting. And with that comes a lot of finished objects. We have some test swatches, we have some works in progress, and I want to talk about yarn and yarn choice and what I drive into that and what's appropriate and what's not, because guess what? I have made some mistakes and I have also made some successes, and it would be good to know that before going forward with some things. So let's kick it off with the most impressive thing. Wow, you at the beginning. I finished my Nightbook sweater, and this thing is crazy. I really like this. This is from Unwind Knitwear. I knit this up in Holst yarn and bicycle yarn from West Wool. It's blocked, it's great. Everything went pretty well. It was a test knit. The pattern's been out for a couple of years, but they wanted to see how things were going, so I decided to jump on it. It was my first color work. It is a fingering weight full color work thing, so of course it came off my needles in 4 weeks. I don't know how that happened, but it was pretty good. Much smoother and much easier than anticipated, and I'm really happy with it. One thing that I would like to point out is that my row gauge was so far off, even compared to my swatch. Like my swatch, I swatched this portion right here, and it was like, I don't know, an inch shorter, something like that. So it messed with the pattern a little bit. Not that I wouldn't have messed with it anyway, but like the sleeves, you can see the cuff is really short. We didn't have time to do that. And then I was expecting to add a lot more length on the bottom, but I liked a long rib anyway, so that's fine. She had some optional stuff for extending it and not. So let's go through this. I used some leftover bicycle for the collar, which was black, which I was anticipating doing on the cuffs as well, but it had a little bit more like volume to it, a little bit rounder of a yarn. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a folded over sewn in collar with a twisted rib, and it's just a little bit more puffy. And then that's also what the yellow color is here, which is really nice. Yeah, and then I mixed in some Holst yarn, either black or ink, depending on where it is on the sweater, in for the color work, and then all the rest is Holst. Modifications I made a longer yoke depth because it was made for a lady, and I am a man, even though I don't really have like broad shoulders or anything. So the yoke is a bit longer, and then I did the sleeves to pattern, but they're like just long enough, and I think that it would have been nicer for these to come in a little bit. The way that it knit up for me is these flare out a little bit. I think I had to add one extra stitch to get this pattern, but they seem to fit fine in the aqua part, but not this. And yeah, and then I didn't add any extra length for the stuff because my row gauge was so far off, but it's beautiful. And what I would have done, let me show you on this part of the thing, is it's this red pattern right here that repeats, and I think that instead of her color work addition for that, I probably would have taken like this part here and added it onto the bottom, because I think that that is more beautiful than something like this. I don't know, I really like this motif. She really did a great job with that. And another modification I made is in the transition rows, there's actually a pattern that you're supposed to be having, but I used it to combine the yarns and make it a little bit more like going, because it's really supposed to be a 2-color pattern. So you have your contrast color and your main color, and I obviously did not follow that. So I cannot check the yardage. My gauge was a little off in terms of rows. But I'm really impressed with this sweater. It was in my mind. I needed to do it. I think it cost under 100 euros to make total, including the expensive wool, and it's nice. I'll never wear it. I don't wear color, but I'm really quite impressed with it, and I'm glad I did it. It was really an achievement. I can do color work. I didn't know I could do color work. It was fun. I learned a lot, and I think it was good. In general, I'm probably not a color work type of guy, although I do have some like ideas for color work coming up. in what I want to do. But in general, I like texture more, I think. It's like cables, knit purl stuff, which we can see in my next thing. And a little bit more bolder and color blocking like this, but for what I wear, it's just black, so simple. But Unwind Knitwear's Nightbook sweater, highly recommend. It was a great thing. There were lots of modifications. It was super well written, and yeah, it was good. What I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about yarn choice a little bit. I used Holst because it was cheap and I knew that I wasn't going to wear it. But also, Holst is great for color work. So I used the Super Soft, which is 100% wool. It is a bit toothy, and it comes with the spinning oil in it, so you have to wash it and process it and stuff, which is fine. But it turns out great for color work in terms of the stitch definition and how it works, and how to make things go. Oh, there's a mistake there. I didn't notice. All right, well, it's going to be there still. I'm not going to fix that. But it's a great color work yarn. Which brings me on to the next thing, is I tried out Holst for another pattern, and then I didn't really read the pattern a whole lot. I was like, oh, it's a scarf. I don't know about. But halfway through the pattern, I was like, oh, it says don't block, which you have to block Holst yarn because it has the spinning oil on it. You don't have to stretch it necessarily, but you have to block it. But I finished my Brette Scarf, which, oh, you cannot see this at all. It has some texture on it. It's the origami knitting. It's the Brette Scarf by Ratsisu. I'm hoping I pronounced that correct, but I'm probably not. It's a beautiful pattern. This thing is like 2 meters tall. I mean, it's super tall. It's like 6 foot something for all of you in imperial measurements. It has this built-in origami thing, so it looks like it's folding on itself. And it's a really easy pattern to do once you get the repeats. I would suggest putting stitch markers between everything, and it's nice. And then the Holst knit up very well. What I would say is I didn't know that you needed to not block this, and it flattened out a little bit. You can still see the texture, but it flattened out a little bit with the washing. And then when I dried it crinkly, so hopefully it stayed in with the pleats that are already on it. But the yarn did fill out quite a bit. I think this is more of a fine weight. I think it needs a little bit more of a sport weight to be a little bit thicker. But I was impressed with the yarn, but I just think that this was the wrong yarn for the project. It calls for wall-cut yarns opus, which is very nice, but also very expensive. And I just wanted a simple black scarf. And yeah, so I recommend the yarn, but not for this necessarily. You need something with a little bit more roundness, a little bit more body, something that will hold its shape. A less feltable yarn, so that means more plies, probably a little longer of a staple length, maybe more synthetic, although I don't really knit with synthetics aside from like the crochet yarn that I have. I'd like to keep it 100% natural materials, so the Holst Super Soft was fine. But yeah, I think that there could have been a better yarn choice. However, this thing is amazing. Like, look at this. It is huge. And I'm always cold, and so I'm going to bring this to the office and be super warm. Look, it is even longer. Super warm. It's going to be fashion, and it's going to work. So I'm very pleased with this. My last year's sweater or scarf I took out. They used a herringbone stitch thing, and it was too thin. I didn't like it. I love this stitch, but it didn't work. And I have that yarn, and I need to recreate something with it. Maybe a cowl for something. I'm not really quite sure. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But anyway, my finished finally since April, so it took 4 months because I wasn't really working on it a whole lot. But the Brette Scarf by Ratsisu. And also, I finished this because with this one, I got on Sleeve Island. I was like, I am done with this. I finished, I think, like one sleeve, and I was like, this needs to go into timeout for a week. I don't want to deal with it. So it was on hold. This thing finished up. And I also finished one more little thing. I haven't been going into work because there's been train strikes, and honestly, it's like an hour and 15 minutes door to door each way. and they're like wanting us to go into the office more, like it's mandatory 3 days a week. I don't really know if that's going to happen. But so I had a train project, but then I wasn't going on the train, so I decided to finish it because I wanted it. And that is my my Oslo hat, which I really enjoy, from Petite Knit. I've knit a couple of these before. I've shown them on the podcast. It's great. It's like a simple, I don't know, black hat. It's pretty in style. This is definitely going to be my winter combination. I wanted to try to do a hat per year and a scarf per year per myself. So scarf, hat. This does need to be blocked. I usually do like 104 stitches for a hat with a DK weight yarn on size 3mm needles. It's just the size that I like, but this knit up a little bit tighter. This is done in the Westwool Tandem in just the color black that I got at Stephen and Penelope because it's my local yarn store. It's close. This was leftover from my Redford sweater that I had, which was my first sweater I ever made with Brooklyn tweed. And yeah, so I had this in my stash. I wanted to make a black hat for myself. I wanted to make this black hat for myself. It's great. It's free. Working through some stuff. I really hit up my stash lately, and I've been going through that, which is nice because I'm not really a stasher. I usually buy per project, and then I just knit with that, and then I have some leftovers. That being said, during acquisitions, we'll find out that's not quite true. But in general, that's my approach. We have a room in the house which used to be an office. Well, it is the office, but we just use it for storage, and my yarn's in there. And we need to reorganize. We have some holiday coming up. So I will have to do that then. We're going to go to Croatia for a week, but we have 2 weeks off, so just in the middle. Just beach, chill, do whatever, nothing too exciting. So that's the plan, man. Yeah, I'm looking at the room right now. It's crazy. We need to buy a bookshelf for downstairs. We moved in about a year ago, and we still haven't really completed the house, and contractors are taking forever. Anyway, that's a different story. So we're upstairs. We're in the former storage, now our question mark room that we need to figure out a use for, and I am filming here. Next, swatching. So I did some swatching for a couple of things. One is my Guernsey sweater that I am going to show you, and then another one is another scarf cowl. These are just both leftover yarns. This is a Cosyfine. This is some sort of like really cheap acrylic that I ordered by accident, and I just needed to do a little swatch with and then go from there. We can start with let's start with the scarf. So this is it. What it is it's like a faux rib. It's just going to be, and I had to figure this out, what exactly it was, because I was knitting off this, which is a cowl that I absolutely love, that I bought at a big box brand store, whatever you want to call it, fast fashion, like years and years and years ago when my color palette was gray and not black. And I love this, but it's gray and it's not black, and it's not 100% wool. It's it has some, I don't know, some plastic in it or whatever. So I can't dye it, and I just wanted to recreate this and just make it for myself in a color that I'll wear because I love this. It's a bit, swoop neck or whatever. I don't really do shawls, but I do scarves because the back of my neck feels cold, and I like the idea of scarves. I usually just wear this in the office like this. It keeps me cozy, warm, got a big sweater on. I think it's fantastic. It doesn't look the best, but I enjoy it, so I think that that's what counts. Anyway, I wanted to recreate this in black. From my Brette Scarf, I had the rest of the cone. This probably used less than half of the cone of the Holst Super Soft in ink. And I wanted to recreate this with this material and have it in my life. So this was the swatch that I did to figure out the ribbing. I thought it was like a 3x2 by whatever. Turns out it's 2 rows knit, 2 rows pearls. might write up this pattern just to like have experience with writing a pattern and put it on Ravelry for free. My name is Jimmy Does Knitting on Ravelry. And yeah, I just want to recreate this, which is super simple. What I've started to do is I've put this on hold. This is sort of like a train knitting holiday thing, so I haven't really started on it. It's literally just this so far. So what I'm doing is, these are not on the needles I thought they were, but I bought some wooden needles to travel with so I could take them through airport security, because these are the Addies and these are fixed circulars in 3mm. I bought some Knit Pro in wood that are also about the same length in circulars, fixed circulars. I didn't want to bring any expensive things just in case they get confiscated. So I'm just gonna knit this there. I mean, it's like 3 rows in. What I'm doing is I did a provisional cast on, which is what this red is right here. And I'm gonna a Kitchener stitch at the end to make the infinity part of the cowl, and everything will work. So it looks nice and clean, like it's one thing. There'll be 1 row with 3 knit rows instead of 2, but it should be fine. So this will be an upcoming project that will go on for forever. It's not one of my focuses for things, but I'm really going to enjoy it. I'll probably try to finish it by like November, December, so I can wear it, because I want to wear it and it's super simple. I'd like to have a more complex project and a like completely mindless project, which is usually a hat is my mindless project, especially with Oslo Hat, because it's really just stockinette stitch all the way around, and then you have decreases, but you can read your knitting pretty well once you get to the setup rows. So I like that. This is going to be the alternative, which will clearly take a little bit more time because this thing is quite large. Picked up the swatch. It's large. I think it's like, look guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been living in Europe for 7 years. I have like half metric, half imperial stuff. I can't keep track of the things, so we keep on switching. I apologize for that, but I'm at this point where it's like, this is whatever it is. I worked as an architect for many years, like doing technical drawings in like inches and centimeters, so I have to use that, but I still am using like millimeter sizes for the needles. Temperature sort of whatever, weight is whatever. It's all just a bit of a jumble, so I apologize if you guys are gonna have to Google through half of this. I think I posted the 3 first podcasts and like 10 people watched total, and half of them were me. So I don't know. We'll get through it. But yeah, so that's this and this and the random swatch that I have. I'm hoping that especially with the Holst yarn, that it will stretch out a little bit and flatten. Right now it's really quite ridgy and bumpy. I don't know if you can tell that. It's hard, but the scarf has a little bit more space in between the rows, which I think it will because you have to stretch it out and stuff as I wear it. I'm very excited for it, but there's also no rush. So yeah, there's that. Another stash buster that I'm doing is I have all of this Cosyfine crochet yarn that I used, and I have a ton of this pink for a project that I never used. So I like picked out all of the yarn, I just threw it on the ground up here, tried to come up with something, and it's like, I'm gonna make a pink baby sweater, which is like my new stash busty thing, I guess. Alex's friend has like a daughter or whatever, a toddler. And it's like, oh, this will be perfect to use for her. I don't really believe in like gendered clothing, but also this is just pink and cute. So I started Anker sweater. This is size 2 to 3. Everybody's been knitting it. It looks, I don't know, like a staple. I think it's a really good go-to children's thing. This has gone so fast. I think the majority of this was done in one day, and then the rest at the bottom I've just been picking at when I've been bored and I want like a light color to knit with, because knitting with black sucks. And just stocking that if I'm like, I've been thinking too much. So I used a couple of the colors that I had for the rib detail, and then I switched. And then what I'm gonna do for the cuffs is do the the pink again and see how this turns out. And then I have some blue stuff. I think I'm going to do that for the nephew and some other stuff. But I think this will be good. It's like children's knitwear is a thing that I have not explored because I do not really have children in my life. But I think it's nice. I think it's cute. We'll be doing more of these. I know that the parents are appreciative knitters or knit gifters. So they will be wearing them and they will like them, and it's a good thing. So it busts my stash, gives me something easy to do, and somebody enjoys it. On to Fisherman sweater. So Irish Farm Art, Sam, has did a whole video about Gansies and how about that because he was scared about purling and all of this other stuff, and I wanted, a couple of things. I wanted to use up the Rowan Felted Tweed that I had from my Whisper sweater that I took out because it did not fit. And I wanted to just experiment with some texture and something simple, and I thought a Gansey would be a good thing. Now, looking into it, the history is it's more of a North Sea thing than a UK thing. And I live in the Netherlands, which is right on the North Sea, and they have quite a tradition of fishing. And I got a book about the sweaters they wear, knitting in the Netherlands. And it had a bunch of motifs and history and sweaters sort of thing about how things are constructed in the Netherlands and how to recreate some of these sweaters. And I thought it was great as a way to have a dense, simple type of project that has an easy pattern to memorize and to get something that kind of relates to what I want to where I live, while just actually making a garment that I wanted. I wanted a thicker, rustic sort of thing. So I came up with these patterns. These are ones that I was really drawn to. This is not anything of, this is not how it actually was. It's a combination of things. What I ended up doing is this swatch, and I've used these motifs, but not quite in this way. I really like this one and the ribbing that it creates, with the vertical stripes. I've been attracted to this pattern for a while, and I was going to do a whole sweater with it, but I figured this was my opportunity. I love a simple twisted cable. What I did with this swatch is the stitch counts that they were in the book, because I wanted it to be somewhat authentic and somewhat not. And what I realized is I didn't want to do that. I extended both this cable, the 2x2 cable, was on a 4-stitch repeat. This portion right here was on a 5-stitch repeat. In the end, what I did is I elongated them so it's a 6-stitch repeat. So if I knit back and forth on the 6th row, which is the right side row, I do all the things at once, and then it's just the same pattern, because it has the same amount of stitches in between all of them, and it's just easy to go through, and it's really fast to knit. So what these sweaters were is each village or each crew or area or region had their own sort of thing. They would use traditional wool. It was in a worsted weight. Typically in the Netherlands it was dark blue from what I understand, and sometimes it was a cornflower blue, and they would have lots of motifs in there. Some of these sweaters were actually very intricate and very fancy. They had flags and chevrons and stuff for the waves, and different things to symbolize a family even. Sometimes it's your initials and diamonds and all this other stuff. I wanted to keep it a little bit more simple. I wasn't going to go into that. But they would knit these in this dark blue worsted weight, and then they would scald them and they would shrink them. So they're super, super, super dense. They would knit them double the size, they said, which I don't know if that's exactly what they did. But according to the book, they knit them double the size, and they would just go and shrink and have these super dense sweaters that the fishermen would wear. And these would be essentially their coats for everything. So I really enjoyed looking at that and seeing what's going. But when making your own version, I have, between the book I showed you, I have another Guernsey book, which is, what is it? Patterns for Guernseys, Jerseys, and Errands. And this one, like, the pattern instructions are like, this is how you do the motif, and then just knit a sweater. So I just decided to, like, design my own and figure out how to do this. What I did is this, and this is about a week's worth of knitting, and this is why I can't have expensive yarns, because this is essentially the front and almost the back. It's 8 days technically, and it is like largely complete with things. And I can go through the pattern a little bit. I'm debating writing this up and sizing it just for like an exercise. I don't think that this is really a pattern that people will want. It's not very fashionable. It's kind of old-fashioned, but I think it's good. But it appears as though, in general, these things were knit like bottom up or top down. I'm doing bottom up in the round because I like circular needles. So all of this was knit, and then you go through here, you separate for the sleeves, and then you go up, and then you seam the shoulders, and then you stitch. You pick up stitches for the arms, and then you knit down. Sometimes there's a motif, sometimes there's not. I'm going to do a little bit of a motif because I'm feeling fancy. And that's how they make them. In general, they have different, like, sometimes they have like a gusset here, which I did not do. I decided to keep it simple. Sometimes they have a little bit of shaping over here, so it's the slant, but I made mine really boxy just because I think most of them really were boxy, and I didn't want to put in the effort to essentially design that. I tried to figure out like the collar and like patterns for the collar, but then they're like, oh, just knit the collar. And so this is what I did. One of the books had this collar decrease, which will be here, and then I'm going to do like a folded up 2x2 rib. That's a little bit of a turtlenecky thing. And yeah, I'll seam at the shoulders with a 3 needle bind off, which I have not done. So a couple things about this is, one, I didn't trust my math. The bottom of this really cast on super tight. I was supposed to use 4.5 millimeter needles, which usually for a worsted weight I use 5, but I wanted something that was like way more dense, which this will be because this has the Holst Super Soft, so it will pop up. And then also the Rowan Felted Tweed that I used is a little bit tortured because I tore it out. So once those block out, they'll poof and they'll be good. But this base part, I've stretched it out some, but when I was casting it on, it was so tight that it didn't even like fit around my waist. So I switched to a 5 millimeter needle for the body, and I wish I didn't. I wanted this a little bit more fitted. I don't have a whole lot of fitted sweaters. I usually wear something a little bit oversized. This will still fit. I think it's fine, but it's not the ideal fit, but there's no way that I can tear this yarn out. Like, it's, the two strands are together and they're both very toothy, and I'll just absolutely ruin it. Plus it's like an easy knit and it's comfortable and I'll wear it. So I've decided in terms of construction that I like a bottom up in terms of how it fits me. Working from the top down, no seams, everybody prefers. I get it, it's fantastic. I like it too. Every time I've done that, there's some fit issues and I don't know, and then the yoke is strange, or there's something with the raglan. And also, I'm a little bit like Gumby. I do a lot of yoga. I just sort of don't have body awareness if I'm like moving in between poses. So a garment that's a bit more structured, which means having seams and stuff, wears better on my body because it makes me look a little bit more solid. And unfortunately, that's how it's going to have to be. So that's why the bottom up works well, because if I do the math correctly, I know it. I can knit this in a tube, and then the upper body has a bit more structure, which is good for me. What I've done is ooh, this does turn out well. I've done the texture on the front, and I've made sure the cables kind of go away from each other and just knit it in the round. I did some seed stitch details. I don't know if you can see this very well or not. Under the arm, I think if I had to redo, I would just do plain stockinette stitch because I think it would go better with the overall pattern. I think it's like, oh, this is a tabard and then this is some other stuff. But I think it will be nice and I really like it. What I wanted to talk about in terms of yarn choice with this is look at these cables. I don't know if you can see this. In this more like rustic toothy yarn, see how flat they are? See how there's not that much definition and it's really something subtle? I mean, it's there and you can see it, but they're really like a flattened cable. And I think that's fine and perfect for what I wanted for this. And I probably would have not done cables had I wanted like a poofy cable. But this is another point where yarn choice is more important. Like if you look on this swatch, you see how the cables are a little bit more pronounced because this is more plies and a little bit like rounder and chunkier of a yarn. So that's just something you need to keep in mind with stuff. And I'm learning the hard way, especially learned it the hard way with my cable sweater with the viscose bamboo one, which was beautifully round, but it like sagged, it drooped so much. Another thing I want to say about this is holding the Holst with the Rowan Felted Tweed. It's giving it a little bit more density and a little bit more strength. The Felted Tweed has some viscose in it and it has alpaca. So it's a bit more drapey and fine. I think that this adds the perfect amount of stuff. And it makes it a little bit darker. I mean, this is all right, but maybe in the light this looks a little bit more black than it is, but it looks pretty gray. And this blackens it up a little bit, which I think is quite nice. I'm really quite pleased with this. This is flying off the needles. I'll probably be able to finish this in a week or two, depending on how motivated I am or not with getting it. But yeah, it's a Gansey. I might write this up into a pattern. I think that it would be good practice in general. I'm a trained designer, so I went to architecture school, but I treated, especially grad school, just like art school. I worked for many years like designing interiors, especially for restaurants and retail. I used to do like the prototypes for like certain banks and certain retail stores and certain restaurants and design those all. And then I switched to management after a while because designing was just, it got weird. It got really weird and the egos and strange stuff. So I switched to management and I hadn't really had a design outlet until knitting came along. And whether that's modifying somebody else's patterns, but I'll probably start doing more of my patterns. I think it's much more fulfilling and like work is just slow. So if I can take up some time and release that design way of going, and there's a certain amount of construction to it. I've been doing so much math with this stupid sweater. So yeah, I think that this is where my design thing is. I know everybody's like, oh, you know, the podcaster that designs, but that was sort of the whole thing behind starting this anyway. And I really enjoy it, and I think that's good. I have plans, and it's like really not set up, but I really want to try like a raglan because I've only designed like drop shoulder stuff from before. This is a similar shape to what I did for my boyfriend's sweater, where it was that stripy one, but it's like drop shoulders. But that I seamed the sleeves in, but it's like a square, a rectangle with sleeves, and I want to get a little bit different with that. I really am interested in this like bottom up raglan construction, where you start with the bottom and then you have the two sleeves and then you join in the round and start the thing. I might try to experiment with something like that and then put some like texture on it, or use that as like my base pattern for a lot of things, and then from there be able to play with it and do some things. I had an idea for this one stitch that I absolutely loved, and I swatched it last weekend and I tore the swatch out, which is why I'm not showing you anything. But it's a pattern that I found. I saw in the wild at a coffee place, and then it's a pattern that I found only in like Hindi on like random websites, and I had to like deconstruct it because it wasn't really clear how to do it. And also I knit continental and all of them knit English style, so I was like, what's going on? It's a bunch of twisted stitches that have sort of a basket weave pattern. I did the sample. One, the sample didn't look good. It didn't look the way I wanted to, and also it would take forever. And I wanted to do like a whole sweater in it, or at least like the front and back panel with maybe like a saddle shoulder or something. And it wasn't gonna happen. It wasn't gonna happen. That stupid swatch, like this big, and I only did like 5 rows. Took me like, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. I'm not gonna do a whole sweater with that. And it was like all twisted stitches. And well, I think that twisted stitches are beautiful. I'm not doing that for a whole sweater. Maybe I'll pick up some spare yarn and try it with like a cowl and make like a little thing and give it to my mom. Maybe we'll publish it and go from there. But I mean, I don't know. So that was going to be my big project. I was going to do like a hat and mittens and a sweater and like knit it this certain way. And now I'm like, I need another idea. So I ordered a book for some inspiration, and we'll see. But I really want to start getting things for like, writing things up and sizing things and like putting things out there in terms of design. I'm a little bit hesitant to do this one, which I could. I had the pattern all written down in my notebook. I mean, it's a complete mess, but I have that. I have a chart for it. It's easy to size. I know how I would have to size it. I just don't know like grading or a tech editor or something. Maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not, maybe I try it with something else, but I do want to try to get one pattern out this year, maybe, or I have a couple of patterns ready to go. I don't have people to test knit these things, so like if I wanted to do it, I would have to test knit another one myself, which as fast as this is going, it's a worsted weight sweater essentially, and as much as I'm doing, if I could knit like a test sweater in like 3 weeks with working on it part-time, because this went on timeout for a bit, yeah, I could do it. It went out for timeout because I got a monkeypox vaccine, and let me tell you, that thing knocked me out. I was just like floored. I like slept for like 2 days. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I got a little bit of a welt on my arm. But here at Jimmy Does Knitting, we believe in science and we believe in being safe and preventative. So we got the monkeypox vaccine. Part of that also is because I do, like, I'm not so into risky behavior, and that's not a thing. But I do yoga 6 times a week, and I have my own little mat cover, and I put that out. But in general, I'm rolling around on a mat that like multiple people have been sweating on for days, and even though I take my best precautions to like use my own mat cover and clean the mat, it still worries me a little bit because it's the skin contact, and yoga is super important to me. Like if I don't do it, then I go crazy. I go absolutely crazy, especially because I went on burnout earlier this year, which is not a thing in America, but in the Netherlands it's a thing. Work got crazy. I could not do it anymore, and I just like tanked. And then I've just been doing yoga 6 days a week since then, and it's been great. I'm like a registered yoga teacher, so I've done all my training and stuff. It's something that I've always done quite a bit, but lately it's just been like, you have to do this, which I have a lot of other thoughts and feelings on. But this is a yoga podcast, not a yoga podcast. This is a knitting podcast, so we'll get back to the knitting. One good thing is this will be killer to wear when I do yoga in the winter, which I love to do, is wear a hand knit sweater, do some yoga. After it, you go into Shavasana, little blanket, your hand knit sweater. Fantastic. I highly recommend it. Right. So I have an acquisitions thing. I've been trying not to stash and buy a bunch of yarn, but then here we are with stuff. I knew that the Fisherman sweater was knitting out super, super, super fast. So I needed to get another project prepared. And what I want to do is finish the body today, and then I'll swatch for my next one, or do something else and take a break and maybe start the sleeves tomorrow, or at least cast on a sleeve tonight or something. I'm not really quite sure. Point being is I need another sweater to work with. And I went to my parents because they both will wear my knitting. We haven't really tried it yet because I'm still a fairly newish knitter, but I'm having more sweaters in my closet than I will wear. So I need to like either do something or like design something for other people. I've got a couple people that will do it, and I don't know, need to figure this out. But I asked my dad what does he want, and I put him to Brooklyn Tweed, and he wanted the Slade cardigan. And I was like, cool, I've never done a cardigan before. It looks like a fairly simple like cardigan with like a shawl neck, maybe some buttons, maybe not. I got his measurements, and I wanted to order some yarn. Like I said, I go through yarn so fast, and I do garments. I don't do accessories. I don't do like a shawl with like multiple like one-off skeins. I do hats quite a bit actually because it's my simple knitting, but I don't really like knit like socks and all this stuff that we'll use whatever. I use quantities of yarn, and I use them fast, and I use a lot. So it's hard for me to justify like 200 or 300 euros on a sweater, which is what I want to do. I want to knit with like, I have a couple brands that I'm like watching for a sale, or like when I go to America and I don't have to pay 100 euros in import tax. I just can't bring myself to spend 300, 400 euros on yarn a month so I can just knit as a hobby to somebody who may or may not wear it, including myself, because I have a lot of sweaters now. So I went for some cheap stuff, and I bought some Drops Big Merino. I know Drops is a little shady in terms of ethics, but it's 100% wool, and it works. He is very sensitive skin. My parents are, suburban white people in the Midwest. And they're like, oh, I can't do anything rustic. It just needs to be super soft. So merino was the thing. Just like a high twist, something nice. This was on sale. And it was on, and not that like Drops cost a tremendous amount of money anyway. But then I went crazy. Not only did I get a sweater's quantity of the gray, I got a sweater's quantity of the black version of it, because I will use a sweater's quantity of black yarn to make a sweater of black yarn. And I think these were maybe a little over 60 euros for like a large sweater. So I can make like a large or extra large with these, and it still only costs like 60 euro, which is great. I want to keep it around 100 euros per sweater. I don't really like spending much more than that, because then I spend a lot of money. But I mean, every once in a while I think I'll treat myself, but I'm not quite there yet. So yes, I got a sweater's quantity of both of these, and what I also got was a sweater's quantity of Drops Nepal, which is like wool and alpaca. So this is a more rustic yarn. This is a little bit more of a like high twist, like lots of ply yarn. So you can use them for different things. You can use them for the same things. It doesn't really matter. So I got like a huge box in my stash that I can use. But now it's great because I can just pull from there. I know I have a sweater's quantity of yarn. I don't know what my next projects are, but I know that at least, like with at least these black yarns, I know I'll wear them, if nothing else, if nobody else wants stuff. It's unlike, I don't like these one-off skeins or like these hand-dyed skeins, partially because they're marled and I just like a solid color, but also partially because it's just like who's gonna wear them? Like, when am I going to use this? I need to come up with like a project for it, and that's just not how I knit. I'm very much a product knitter. I like want something solid and something like there, like that's wearable and looks fairly commercial. I don't really want it to look hand done. I like a solid color. I like consistency. And I don't mind bands of solid color and trying to use color in an interesting way, but I essentially, I don't want a marled shawl with 3 of these different things. It doesn't suit my personality. It just is a little bit more straightforward. It's part of this whole like uniform thing that I wear, and that's also just the type of garments and knitting that I'm attracted to, and I think that that's fine. So solid color, sweater quantity yarn, fantastic. Black, I'll wear it, I'll use it, well, it'll be good. Chatty episode today. One last thing that I did get, because I've been blocking so much lately, and because Holst you need to wash with, I've been trying a couple of different things. Like before I was using Marseille soap, which is an oil-based soap, which is really natural. It's fantastic. I use it for like everything. It was not working for the Holst. I couldn't get it to like bubble insides. So then I used this other stuff that we got from somewhere else, and it like turned everything blue. I mean, everything I knit was this black, so it's fine, but like everything was kind of blue for a while, and I was like, what's going on here? So in the sale from the Dutch website that I got all the drops from, they also had some wool wash. So I caved. I hate using things in plastic bottles. I think that this is ridiculous, but I bought some wool wash to test it out. Either this or like go down the street to like the drugstore and buy like cheap shampoo, which I could do. I figured I'd treat myself, to be nice to my knits. Have the lavender one, not only because it smells good, but it's supposed to get rid of the moths and stuff, and see how this works. So we'll go for it. I have things that need to be washed soon, so I will use it and report back. Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is Eucalyptus Delicate Lavender. It's very exciting stuff. And that's all I have for knitting at the moment. I do have some things on order that have not come, so we can discuss that next time. I think that will be more of me designing my next sweater and how I want to do it, and trying to play with some construction and a little bit of a pattern, but somehow establish a base thing. And yeah, I have that one upcoming project from my dad. The scarf is going to be my holiday knitting, and we'll see what comes. I might do a Christmas sweater. I've been playing with like an ugly Christmas sweater idea for forever, and I think I've figured it out. There's hooks and yarn in Amsterdam. I know has the yarn that I want, so I could do that. The question is just how long will it take me? Will I ever get to it? Yeah, but I'll probably do an ugly Christmas sweater one day. It's kind of, is it this year? Is it next year? How's it going? It will also be color work, because you can't have an ugly Christmas sweater without color work. Yeah, so that's about it. Thank you to all who come and watch my videos and click on me and do all the things. I do not have much of a presence on YouTube. I don't think I'll have much of a presence on YouTube for a while. I am terrible at social media, as evidenced by my Instagram having like 2 knitting posts. Because it's been so hot, I haven't gotten pictures of some finished objects, but I have like the scarf, I have my boyfriend's sweater, I have the Nightbook sweater, I have this Fisherman sweater that I'll have to take pictures of. I'm thinking of just like going along the canals of Amsterdam, which is always like a stunning thing, and taking pictures of it there, cheating from Stephen West and all of his stuff, and try that. Yeah, the cowl for the Stephen West thing, his new shawl is going on. I really admire him, and I love his shop. I really like what he's doing with that. It's a little bit pricey, but I still go there. And I've been really following what he's been doing in terms of how he's establishing things and following the hype. But his patterns are just not for me. I think maybe one day I'll do a shawl or something, but it's not. It's very a process knit. Like, let's play with all the colors. Let's get these very special things and make them into something. And that's not necessarily how I go, but it's really fascinating to watch this, because I think a lot of men follow him and how he's doing things, and like to even just see the store and like go to the store when this is happening and all this other stuff. It's really like I'm sitting there and I'm taking notes. Every once in a while I'll see him with his dogs, biking around in Amsterdam, but like that's about it. But yeah, so I think that that's an interesting thing. I will not keep you updated here about that because it's just not something I'm going to do, nor do I want to do. But who knows? We'll see. And okay, now I think I'll end it. I've been rambling on for almost an hour. I really needed to talk today, I guess, which is good because that means that my boyfriend will not have to suffer through me too much. So, talking about knitting, I really should have come to you earlier because I've had so much to show, which is really quite unusual. And yeah, well, thanks for joining. I'll see you hopefully in a month, where I will not be tanned, because I do not get tanned, but I will hopefully be a little bit more relaxed. I'll have some progress on what I've been showing you. Hopefully the sweater will be done, we'll cast on the cardigan, and we'll have some progress on a scarf. So, thank you, stay cool, stay safe, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks, and bye.